area of our policies is sufficient. That's up to yourselves, but it's there and it came through the review of constitutional documents. Housing, I think, I suspect the Chamber is very agreed that housing is absolutely key to our local population and retention and growth. It's a specific item now within Sustainable Development Committee, very much within the remit of that committee. But the advantage of these member officer working groups, of course, is that the Comhairle has the opportunity to invite other groups and organisations, interested parties, government, others onto a working group with a bit of flexibility. Whereas if we create a JCC or a subcommittee, that is a fixed membership that it's quite then a process to disengage or add to. The advantage of a member officer working group is you can look at something on a time-limited basis in a bit of detail and ask the right people onto it. So I think housing is quite suitable for that, and I would recommend, in the light of what's been said in the Chamber previously, that you create a housing member officer working group. Energy, I think, speaks for itself. The same arguments apply. A lot going on, to say the least. It's right, perhaps, that there's an energy group also established. Primary industries, we've always debated this. We used to have a crofting JCC and a fishing JCC, and it was sometimes said these hadn't met very often, but that was because the subject matter was of such importance that reports were going straight to Sustainable Development Committee. But there's also Harris Tweed, another primary industry. And again, I think the member officer working group flexibility argument applies particularly with this sector. You wouldn't want to have you wouldn't want to have a fixed membership comprising all of these groups for whom not all the agenda was relevant. I think we would want to invite those with the most to contribute to at a particular time. So just for the record, though, that would include the remit of the former Fisheries and Crofting JCC. All of these matters, feeling sorry for Councillor Crichton here, fall really within the remit of Sustainable Development Committee, but they are particular elements of our corporate policy. There's a whole section on energy, of course. There's a whole section on primary industries, naturally enough. And of course, housing, jobs and housing, of course, are critical to any strategy on population. So those were the four groups which were identified in March by the previous council. It's for this council to decide whether they want to keep these, retain them, add to them, not appoint to them, but it's certainly recommended that housing, energy and primary industries should be established. And Mr. Mackay will advise on the mechanics of so doing if you're minded to go with these recommendations. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief Executive. So are members quite happy to agree to establish these member officer working groups, population, housing, energy and primary industries? 4 member officer working groups. And are you quite happy to make appointments today? You're agreeable with that? Okay, so Derek Mackay will take us through the appointments process. Derek.
Well, the appointment process will just be seeking nominations for the member officer working groups. It is for the Comhairle to decide how many members are appointed to each one. You wouldn't want too many members appointed to it, because the whole purpose of member officer working groups is to encourage dialogue and discussion and debate, and particularly with the primary industries, there could be a wide range of external people appointed. As the Chief Executive has indicated, each of these do cover or link very closely to the remit of Sustainable Development Committee, and it, in terms of the member officer working group rules, a working group that falls within the remit of the committee, the chair and vice chair should be ex officio members. Although I'm conscious it does add quite a bit to the workload of both, being on 4 MOGs.
Okay, that's fine. So I agree. Well, how many, first of all, members would you like to see on these member officer working groups? Councillor McCormack.
Could you remind us how many we've had on working groups in the past. Perhaps that would guide us.
Derek? Okay. Too many lights on. That's it.
The membership has varied from working group to working group, but it tends to be 10 or less members on each one.
Okay, thanks, Derek. Leader, will you want to come in there?
Yeah, thanks. I think when we started the term, I suggested it might be quite good to kind of replicate the budget board style of having membership spread throughout the islands. So 10, 11, I don't know if that's too much. It might be.
Yes, yeah.
one for
But
each one.
the likes of the primary industries one, if we're going to go with the way, you know, the fisheries and crofting JCCs, where we would be taking in people from outside bodies that have an interest in fisheries and crofting.
For that as well, we could structure the agendas and the meetings so that one meeting of the MOUD could cover fisheries remit,
Okay.
a separate meeting could cover crofting, and you bring the interests in at that stage. When officers appointed to a member officer working group would be determined by the chief executive, again taking account of the agenda and the paper on each particular MOUD.
Okay. Thank you, Derek. So, how many would you like to see then? 11 on each.
Sure. Comhairle.
Sorry, Councillor Gordon-Murray. Too many lights on, I think. That's it, Gordon.
Thank you, Convener. Maybe you should seek members, and that would determine the membership. I think there's quite a lot of meetings going on, and people have to balance their workload. So I think that might help you in determining how many by seeking.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Murray. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Convener. That suggestion is I think worthy of consideration, because we will of course by Friday have 2 new members of the Corporate, and we could seek expressions of interest on the basis of 1 from each ward, if that is the wish of members.
Okay. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. I feel myself that 10 or 11 members is too much, because it's really important to note that it's a member officer working group, and that officers have equal status with members in that forum. And it's really essential that that robust debate is allowed to take place, and there should be equal status. So I don't think we should be overloading the groups too much with members.
Okay, Derek. Aye.
And just to clarify as well, member officer working groups are not decision-making bodies. They will not make decisions. The reports will feed back through the formal decision-making process, where all members shall have the opportunity to participate on these items.
Councillor McCormack.
Thank you, Convener. I would like to support the point made by Councillor Crichton. We don't want to make the group too big, because that tends to inhibit discussion. I was trying to remember just from memory of the groups that I've been on in the past. The figure of 7 sort of comes into my mind as the number that we relied on in the past for a member officer working group. And that seemed to work quite well, because as Councillor Crichton mentions, it is member officer working group. So we're going to have officers there, and we're also going to have representatives from external bodies. So it quickly becomes quite a big group.
That's very correct, Councillor McCormack. When I was chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Member Officer Working Group, I think it was 7 members we had, and then officers. So, and I think it worked quite well. To Councillor Ray Mackenzie.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, that's the same point I was going to make, but I don't think that the number of members should be too high, because you're going to have the chairman and vice chairman ex officio. So another 4 or at the most
5 members.
Five members.
Yeah.
I think it would be quite enough.
Okay.
And the other point that I don't know if it's been made, but members can apply to go along to the MOUs if they have a special interest in it. I think that was the case.
Absolutely, yes. And at most of these MOUGs, members not serving on the MOUGs were making requests to go to the meetings, and yeah, they were allowed to go along. It's not a problem. So the SHA feeling, I think, that 7 members for each MOUG would be sufficient, and then the SHA officers. Are all members in agreement with that? Okay, so we'll go with 7 members then for each MOUG. Do we want to appoint just now, or do we wait till we have the full complement of 29 councillors? Okay, thank you very much.
Convener,
okay,
Mr. Mackay and I will seek expressions of interest when the 2 new members are in place, and if there's an excessive number, we'll bring a report back to the chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief Executive. Item number 9 is the committee decision reports, and sorry, I missed out on an important one. Item number 8, senior councillors' allowances. This report requests that members determine the allowances payable to senior councillors. 4 senior councillors' allowances remain available for allocation to post holders, or the Comhairle may wish to consider the award of a senior councillor allowance to the posts outlined at paragraph 2.4 of the report. There is a recommendation for approval at paragraph 3.1 of the report, and the Chief Executive will speak on the report and answer any questions.
Thank you, Convener. I won't take members through the paraphernalia of the regulations, but at the end of the day, 4 senior councillor allowances are available for the 6 posts set out in 2.4. 2.3, just for the record, suggests that we give an equal allowance to each post. I mean, the sums involved are not great, and I think it would be impossible to try and grade these in any way. It's not as I say, it's not a huge sum, but 2.4 confirms that there are 6 posts listed there for which there are 4 SCAs. We cannot change the number of senior councillor allowances. That's not in our, that is set by the 2017 regulations. And I'll come on to some comments about these posts in a moment. Also in 2.4, I am recommending that a review take place after 1 or 2 years. It's up to you to decide, of course, whether we review and after how long. But I think it's only fair, given these are new posts in a new structure, some of them, that we review it perhaps halfway through the term. So going to 5.1, we have looked back and we have done a reasonable estimate as far as we can of the workload involved. And the first post to be considered there is the Vice Chair of Policy and Resources Committee, who in this term also holds the post of Deputy Leader. And I've set out some of the duties of the post there. I won't read them out to you, but there are subcommittees to chair, and there is, of course, deputising for the leader. So it is I'm recommending to you, on the basis of that workload, that position be allocated a senior councillor allowance. Also, the chair or vice chair, the Comhairle either chairs or acts as vice chair of the Integration Joint Board. That's 10 meetings a year. It's very similar in workload and intensity to that of a service committee, although it's obviously shared with Health Board representatives. So I think on that basis, it's an onerous task, so that too is recommended for allocation. Chair of the Community Safety Board. This is a new body, of course, as you know, so difficult to estimate workload at this stage. We're estimating five meetings a year, and the remit is set out. So there's no recommendation there other than that you consider whether that post be given an SCA. Likewise, Chair of Social Work and Social Care Board, again newly established, it will meet at least quarterly, so very similar to the Community Safety Board. Chair of the Planning Board, though, this combines, there are combined functions. The Planning Board usually meets between 3 and 7 times a year, so it's in the middle. And the review body and the chair, of course, is the same following yesterday's decisions, usually meets once or twice a year. So it's reasonable to assume that the board will meet on at least 6 occasions per year, and that's comparable, I suppose, to the service committees. Not a big difference from the other boards, but we have to go in the figures in front of us. So on balance, it's recommended that that post be allocated an SCA. Comhairle nan Eilean, that replaces a previous committee which met infrequently in 2021, but met on 4 occasions a year at least during pre-pandemic work. So that's up to yourselves, I think, entirely. The workload is perhaps similar to community safety, social work and social care. We intend, obviously, to strengthen that function, but the 3 we are recommending at the moment, certainly Vice Chair of Policy and Resources Committee, Chair or Vice Chair of the Integration Joint Board, and on balance, Chair of the Planning Board, and you can choose one of the other of the 3 of Community Safety Board, Social Work and Social Care Board, and Comhairle nan Eilean to allocate the 1 remaining SCA. Not an easy decision, but we are bound by the numbers set out in the regulations.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief Executive. So, do you agree to the recommendations there for the 3 posts that should be given a senior councillor's allowance? That's the Vice Chair of PNR, the Chair of the Integration Joint Board, the Chair or the Vice Chair of the IJB, and the Chair of the Planning Board. And if so, Councillor Ray McKenzie.
I was just going to make a suggestion, Convener, that in view of the fact it doesn't seem to be a great amount, that I think it's about £6,000 or something like that, that it be split equally between the 6 posts. But that's just right.
Apparently we can't do that, Councillor McKenzie.
Pardon?
We can't do that, apparently.
So it has to be.
Yeah, it has to be 4.
Okay.
4 positions, and in the report there's recommendations for 3 to give the senior councillors allowance to 3 of these positions at the moment, and they can only decide what will be the 4th one that will get the SCA. So are you all quite happy with the recommendations in the report for the 3 posts that are recommended for a senior councillor's allowance? And what other role do we pay the senior councillor's allowance for? The Committee Gaelic, Chair of Social Work and Social Care Board, or the Chair of the Community Safety Board? Any proposals? Councillor Ray McKenzie.
Yeah, okay, well, I suggest it be the social work, social board.
Okay. Councillor Ray McKenzie suggests the Chair of the Social Work and Social Care Board. Do we have any seconded? Councillor Gordon Murray is seconding that. Any other recommendations? Anyone online to come in?
I'd move the Community Safety Board, Convener.
Okay, Councillor Donald Crichton is recommending that the Chair of the Community Safety Board gets allocated the 4th SCA. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Crichton? If there is no seconder, okay, seconded by Councillor Kenneth McLean. Any other recommendations? If not, we can just voting it. And the way to do this, roll call. Roll call. The chairs of community, chair and vice chair of community safety, and the chair of the social work and social care board will not be allowed to vote. Just the chair. Okay, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so just to indicate when your name is called out, social work or community safety. So Derek will take us through the roll call.
Convener,
Social work.
leader, deputy leader,
Safety board.
Kenneth J. McLean, Ian M. MacLeod, Susan Thompson, Mustafa Hussein,
Safety board.
Ushran Robertson, Paul Finnegan, Grant Fulton,
Safety board.
Robert Mackenzie, Angus Morrison,
Safety board.
Ronald Fraser,
Social work.
John Norman MacLeod is the chair of the Social Work Board. Donald McSween, Donald Crichton,
Community board.
John A. McKeever, Colin McLean,
Social work.
Ian M. Macaulay,
Social work.
Malcolm K. MacDonald,
Social work.
Gordon Murray,
Social work.
Ray Mackenzie,
Social work.
Angus McCormack, Dr. Francis Murray, and Councillor George Murray is the chair of the Community Safety Board. Norrie MacDonald
Safety board.
and Finlay Stewart. That's 18 votes for the chair of the Social Work and Social Care Board and 7 votes for the chair of the Community Safety Board.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Convener. Are members minded to review these after 1 or 2 years? I would suggest halfway in the term, which would be after 2 years.
Okay.
Just after we've been able to assess the workload of the new boards.
So 2 years. Okay, everyone's agreed. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 9 now is the committee decision reports, and these are for approval of the recommendations in the decision reports. And the first one is the Education, Sport and Children's Services Committee on the 21st of June 2022, and Councillor Paul Finnegan.
I would move the Education, Sport and Children's Service Committee decision report of the 21st of June 2022 with the inclusion of Chair and Vice Chair of the Education, Sport and Children's Services Committee at item 18.2.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Do you have a seconder?
I would second that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mustafa. And there's also the following amendment has been submitted by Councillor Malcolm MacDonald and seconded by Councillor George Murray. And can I ask Councillor MacDonald to read out the amendment?
That the Corps wishes to maximise the benefit of the much welcomed new sports facility at Stornoway Primary and recognising the need to fully offset the negative impact of COVID on the recreational and sporting opportunities for pupils at Stornoway Primary, makes provision for a 4-court facility with the addition of an extra bay at a total estimated project cost of 2.14 million, and that the estimated additional cost of 190 1,000 be met from the underspend of 717,000 in the Education, Skills and Children's Service Department for 2021-22, as reported by the Head of Accountancy and Exchequer Services to the Policy and Resources Committee on 22nd June.
Okay, thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Do you have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor George Murray. Councillor Finnegan, are you accepting this amendment?
No.
Okay. So do we want to go to debate or do we just want a vote on the matter? Councillor Crichton.
Thank you, Convener. Just before we go to either debate or to the vote, I think it's important that the context of that 700k underspend is outlined, perhaps to members, so we know it is money that is not, that hasn't been spent. It's money that's committed.
Okay.
I think it's important that it's outlined what it's been committed for, and if members are agreeable to that, I think it will help the decision-making process.
Okay. Can I ask the Director, Eilean MacDonald, to come in on the point made by Councillor Crichton?
Certainly, Convener. I'll commend the underspend isn't an underspend. It's money that the department have decided to allocate, and it's money basically that hasn't been spent because of COVID, etc., and waiting lists. We have proposals in place to have secondary IT equipment, to have the S1 to S3 in the Nicholson Institute, that they would each get a laptop, and that would mean that every young person in their secondaries would then have their own laptop. So this would complete the distribution of secondary laptops at a cost of £252,000. And we also, some of our IT equipment in primary schools is obsolete, as is equipment in Technical Art and Business Department in the Nicholson Institute. They are more than 10 years old and desperately needing replaced. And because of the reduction in the capital programme, we have to find the money from elsewhere. So we've got 165,000 of the money allocated towards the IT equipment. Something else that's pressing for us is play parks, and the play parks, and members will have representations from a number of their constituents regarding some of the play parks. So we're looking at spending some of the money and employing a play park officer to look at the equipment in all our play parks so that we can bring some of them up to standards. And we've also, in times of school offices, when the school assistants, etc., are off, we don't have a budget to replace them, and that puts a strain on head teachers across all our schools and heads of schools. So we're looking at appointing 2 new posts as itinerant school support staff to support the schools when there's absences. And that gives us a total of £600,000 roughly. And we've also need to replace some of our school buses with particular emphasis on ASN in terms of transporting ASN pupils to school. And we are £200,000 short at the moment in terms of replacing ASN transport. So these are all monies, and the budget will be fully spent and committed once we meet the demands of the service. And we believe that these are more pressing, and we would still go with the recommendation in Mr MacLeod's report at Education, Skills, Children's Services Committee, and would ask you to support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Director. Are you quite happy with the response, Councillor Crichton? Okay, did I see a hand? Okay, I thought I saw someone's hand up. So I asked, do we want to go to debate or do we just want to go straight to a vote? Councillor Gordon Murray.
Convener, I think it's important that we encourage debate.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Any other idea, any other views on that? Do we go to debate? Councillor McLean? I agree with Councillor Murray. Okay. Okay, well, I think we want to go to debate then. So it's a mover of the motion first, who is Councillor Finnegan. Then it'll be the mover of the amendment, who is Councillor Malcolm MacDonald. Then the seconder of the motion, Councillor Mustafa, and then the seconder of the amendment, which is Councillor George Murray, and then any other member is free to come in and speak. So, first of all, Councillor Paul Finnegan.
Just want to reiterate what the Director has already said. So as we've said, that the underspend is not strictly an underspend. It is a carryover from the 2021 budget and is fully committed, as you've heard. Replacement of IT devices in the NICI, now more than 10 years old. S1, S2, S3 don't have their own devices, and we want to, and it is the only school in the secondary school in the Western Isles that is the case, and we want to equalise. We talk about equality of access. We talk about harmonisation of timetables, e-SCOL, etc., etc. This is the same thing. This will be doing exactly the same thing. Also, the replacement of IT devices in the primary schools, which again are 10 years old. We've done the departments have put as much upgrade into them as possible, and they are just breaking, and we are having real problems with them. They need to be replaced. It's very critical that we do so. ASN transport is a call of responsibility. The vehicles are old and constantly breaking down, and they need replacing. As this has been said, we have some funding, but we are funding short. And we have a responsibility to present pupils and to those entering education in the next 5 years to make sure we have a fleet that's fit for purpose. We must honour this. Itinerant school staff are required to address school sickness in school offices and better support schools. There is no relief sickness list to cover sickness absence, and COVID exposed our weakness in this area. We want to recruit 2 additional staff on temporary contracts for a pilot for 1 year, and this is how we want to use some of the money. Play park officer. The caller is required to have an investment plan following money given to us from the play parks renewable funding from Scottish Government. This is a requirement. That money will be used to help fund that post and to allow that play park officer, what they'll do is they'll liaise with the communities and consult and help to put together that investment plan that is required by Scottish Government. As you can all see, the list I've outlined are critical to resourcing pupils and resourcing our schools. I also recognise that extra storage space for Stornoway Primary is important. However, we only have a limited amount of money. And as members, we have to make hard decisions, this being the first of many in the next 5 years. I believe that the list I've outlined is more important, though as I've stated, the storage space in Stornoway Primary is important too. But I think this is more important. This list that I've outlined is critical. We have already committed 1.595 million to the project, and we cannot commit more when we have so many urgent demands on our money. Therefore, I ask members to support the motion, and I ask parents of Stornoway Primary who are in the gallery and who are listening through the audio, as I'm sure they are, for their understanding of me in coming to this decision. I do not take it lightly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Finnegan. Councillor Malcolm MacDonald as the proposer of the amendment.
The Stornoway Primary Parents Council have been pursuing this project for 4.5 years. In fact, it was first mooted that the school was not up to standard 12 years ago. The original remit was to address 2 main issues: a tiny gymnasium, small store, no showers and changing facilities, a waterlogged and muddy grass pitch which resembles a paddy field. The saga of what was promised to the Parents' Council from the start until now started with the leader, Mr. Mackay, promising an AstroTurf pitch. Then a covered facility which would provide 100% use throughout the year was proposed. This was all to be a community opportunity for Broad Bay. All councillors supported the proposal at this stage. 1.8 million was allocated on a proposed tented back hall model. And then one of the officials, Don MacLeod, did not come back to the Parents' Council without consultation on the facility proposed, and that was now to be a gymnasium. A meeting was held thereafter, which became heated, and a 2 gymnasium solution was suggested. Financial figures quoted have been inconsistent to the Parents' Council, and they've feel quite disconcerted after the 1.8 million allocation, that there is no coherent plan to deliver a satisfactory solution to satisfy the school needs. In addition, the current proposal fails to deliver adequate toilet, change and shower, office and storage facilities. The amendment seeks to have an extra unit provided to address these issues. Another factor that galvanised the Parents' Council was the fact that since 1969, the only money spent on the school was £1 million on a new roof and windows several years back. During the Education Committee chairmanship of Councillors Morag Munro, Katrina Stewart and Angus McCormack, the Parents' Council was told to wait and be patient. In that time, Sandwich Hill School was closed with monies promised to be spent on Stornoway Primary. The promise has not been delivered to date. The following schools have been built or upgraded in recent times: Scoil na Rú, Barvas, Surrey Scott, the Nicholson Institute, Ballyvanich, Laxdale, Scoil na Atua, and in the offing we have Castleby. The school has about 400 pupils with about 100 in the nursery. It is the largest primary in the Western Isles and the second largest school in terms of pupils in the Comhairle's domain. With the numbers of young pupils attending Stornoway Primary and new housing developments at Melbus, Glendu and Gotill, it is patently obvious that a substantial provision for games and physical education is required for this establishment and indeed the community. A problem exists with child and youth behaviour in and around Stornoway, and a facility that provides alternatives to roaming and cycling the streets will be much welcomed. That is why the extra bay is essential to provide the facilities deserved for Stornoway Primary School.
Okay, thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Mustafa Hussain, as the seconder of the motion.
My phone. Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I wasn't sure that my phone was on. I mean, I do agree with the amendment in welcoming this much awaited investment to build the sports centre facility, which has been highlighted, obviously comes at a cost of 1.95 million, an increase of 150,000 from the original price tag of 1.8. But what they're proposing will increase it to a much higher figure of 2.4, an additional of 190 has been highlighted. So that's a total increase of 340 on the original price. I mean, I totally understand the position of the parent council, you know, and the desire to secure the ultimate possible option for their school. But as a group here, we have the responsibility to manage. Councillor Finnegan mentioned the ever shrinking budget between all other deserving causes. I mean, the other point to highlight here is that the school, who's the client and who's been involved in the negotiation and looking at the design, in this instance, seem to be happy with the agreed compromise, which, as Mr. MacDonald, Councillor MacDonald was saying, it delivers the fourth bay option. So it's clear that it delivers what the school are looking for by providing the court, and that also in line with the recommendation of Sports Scotland, who really they're looking for a 3 as a minimum. And in terms of storage, obviously we've seen the compromise increase the storage from a 6% to an increased storage space of 13.5, which is totally adequate at the moment and acceptable. I mean, bearing in mind that at the beginning, when we obviously welcomed the much-awaited investment for the young people to enjoy, that the proposed amendment will put us at risk of more delays, and as Councillor MacDonald highlighted, the parents were waiting for the last 4 years and looking at more delays and maybe higher cost in the actual building market. Surely that's not what the parents or the people deserve to wait any longer than that at the moment. So because of that, I support the motion.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Mustafa. I'll now ask the seconder of the amendment, Councillor George Murray.
Yes, thank you, convener. This is a subject very close to my heart. Almost 53 years to the day, I left the fondly remembered Nicholson Primary. That's the last primary 6 in that school, and was part of the first intake of primary 7 pupils to the new Stornoway Primary. And we were so proud to go into this shiny new school. We were delighted to be there, but it very, very soon became apparent that it was small. The gym was small. We used to come in muddied from the paddy field, as has been referred to earlier, and we would have to go for showers. A team of boys, we'd have to be timed at about a couple of minutes per boy, and then going in shifts. It was small. I think we've got an opportunity just now to make this a centre of excellence for a relatively small sum of money in the great scheme of things. And I think we should seize that opportunity with both hands, because if we go for the option 1, I think it will become, we'll be looking at this again in the shorter term rather than the long term, and I mean probably within the next 10 years. I remember I was at the meetings when Sandwick Hill closed, and there were assurances given that this shiny school up in Stornoway Primary would well accommodate all the pupils from that school. And there is still bitterness to this day, certainly in the part of the ward that I'm responsible for, from parents who bemoan the fact that the much-loved Sandwick Hill School was closed and they didn't get the benefits that they were assured they would get in Stornoway Primary. I second this motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murray. Before I let anyone in, I am going to ask the leader to say a few words.
Thank you, convener. It's been an interesting debate. Thanks for the points that have been raised. I think one of the things that came forward in the last term, certainly when I was in Chair of Education, was the need to put this facility in place. I think it was quite obvious, and politically the will was there to do something. So I think the one thing I wanted to say was to thank the officers and the school and the members who took this forward, as well as the parent council who was involved in discussions along the way. What we're seeing here today was agreed at Education Committee the other day. I think it's, we'd said the £1.8 million budget. I think it's only right that we increased it to 1.95 because obviously costs had increased. The money coming from the underspend to cover the cost of this additional request today, I don't think is the right way to do things. I think the tack that we've been taking so far has been quite good and quite, it's moved at quite a pace. So again, I just want to reiterate my thanks to everyone who's been involved in the process so far, and whatever way the outcome goes today in terms of the amendment or the motion, I think it's really good the way that it's right that members are standing up for their area and they're trying to get the best for their community. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Leader. Does anyone else want to speak in the debate? Sorry, Councillor Ian Macaulay, who's online.
Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everybody spoken so far in the debate. Could I just say that the Stornoway pupils I've spoken to, and ex-Stornoway pupils for that matter, are over the moon that this is actually happening. When this was put before us at Education on the 21st, there had originally been 2 options. The third option, the one that gave us additional storage, was only added on at the last minute. And that was because the diligence of the Stornoway Primary Parent Teacher Association had pointed out that due to the size of the hall, the storage should represent between 15 and 18% of the size of the hall, and it only represented 6. So obviously, to try and remedy that, there was 2 options. One was to try and squash everything in, and by that way is the one you're trying to vote on today. Is that you're going to have to make the hall smaller, you're going to have to make the badminton court smaller, you're going to have to have a communal changing room instead of the 2 single ones that was in the original plan. So everything's getting squashed just to make this doubling the 6% space. Now, bear in mind that's still well below the 15 to 18% that is recommended. 15 to 18% that is recommended. And bear in mind that this facility will also be used as an assembly hall, where we're going to need storage for chairs, etc. It's not a case of there shouldn't be a case of we have to put up with something that's just not fit for purpose. The other thing is, I do appreciate that there are other things that the director finds important, and I appreciate all these things. There are always going to be things that schools need, whether it's the buses or laptops. But this is the one we've been debating over and over again, and this is the one that's on the table today. And I would hope that we would be able to find the money for it. It's not a squabble for extra money, but it's a request that all this time, effort, and money that we have here is going to be put towards a fit-for-purpose sports development. And it's going to save money in the long run. This is what I really don't understand. At the end of the day, this is going to save us, the council, the education department, money in the long run. And I would urge everybody to vote. Thank you very much indeed, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Ian Macaulay. Councillor Gordon Murray.
Thanks, convener, and thanks for all the comments that have been made. I'd like to start by thanking the proposer and the seconder for their amendment on Stornoway Primary. They certainly have sport running through their veins, which is great to see, and I'm delighted in how they spoke well. They represented their communities very well. I'm going to be relatively brief and say that this amendment is consistent with the campaign for better play and recreational facilities for our children. We cannot begin to understand the effects the pandemic has had on our children. Years of childhood taken away, isolation instead of socialising and playing with their friends. And one of the strong, or maybe the main reasons I came back to the island was to raise a family here, given the childhood I had and growing up, especially with sport. That lost time for our children can never be given back. And I have to say, I feel even more than ever that we owe it to our children, all our children across the Western Isles, to work on improving sports and recreational opportunities, maximising these opportunities. Looking around the chamber, and those members are online, there are people involved or have been involved in sport. And you know what benefits sport has for people, especially for young people. Healthy body, healthy mind. And what better way to counteract the mental health issues, consequences of COVID, is to maximise the space our children can play. Maybe some of these children do not have the money to join clubs and associations and after-school clubs, and the school is the only place where they can play sports, five-a-side football, basketball, badminton. So I would ask members to please support this last step and make a difference to our children. This is our future that we're deciding on, and their future. Let's make it as good as it can be. So I would urge you to support the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Councillor Susan Thompson.
Thank you, convener. I'm speaking in favour of the amendment. It's an aspirational project that I would like to see set the bar for all the future infrastructure projects in the Western Isles. So to my way of thinking, to vote against this is to vote against our future interests when infrastructure projects come up in all the wards that we represent, we'll want this standard for our schools, for our children and for our areas. So we've identified the money. It could always be spent somewhere else, but by spending the money here, it has a long-term benefit. And we can point to this whenever there's an infrastructure project in our wards to see that's the standard for Stornoway Primary and that's the standard that we expect for everything else going forward. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. Does anyone else want to speak in this debate? Councillor Angus McCormack.
Thank you very much, Convener. I think the key thing for us here today is to stick with facts. It's all very well being emotional about Stornoway Primary School and Sandwick Hill School, but we have to trying to deal with the facts, and we're trying to deal with a situation that has dogged us for some considerable time. And the basic problem we have had over the years is not a reluctance to do something. It's been an absence of any finance to do it. And over the years, there have been efforts to find finance, and they have been unsuccessful. And towards the end of the last council, the leader at the time suggested that we look at the matter without defining what we were going to do or defining on how much we were going to spend. And he was supported in that by the chair of the education, who is now our leader. So there was a blank, not a blank check, but there was in terms of deciding what exactly we would do at the school, that was open to discussion. Up until that point, there had been no formal application to the education department for anything. There was an attempt to have a new gym built, proposed by a member of council. The school were not involved in that at all, nor indeed with the parent council at the time. The parent council hadn't made any kind of formal application to the education department for anything. They were concerned and they were talking a lot, but there was no formal consultation. A group was set up to discuss this within the school, which involved members of the directorate and members of the parent council and the management of the school. And that was in the process of discussing things when the leader made his proposal. Since the leader made his proposal, there have been very detailed discussions involving the education department, parent council, and the management of the school. And I would like to suggest to you that the key individuals here in terms of the discussion are the management of the school. It is what they want and what they think would be best for their pupils that should determine your decision. Parents come and go. They're only there for a period of time, and they always will have aspirations for their children. Of course, so they should. But you have to be very careful about how we take decisions in this chamber and whether we do it appropriately or no. You've already been told by the chair of the committee that this money, as far as the education department is concerned, is already allocated to very important areas of expenditure. And you are proposing to take it away from these important areas of expenditure. You haven't addressed that. Nobody's addressed that. So I think it's very important that we look at this in a cool and collected way and determine what is best. This is a significant step forward for Stornoway Primary School. And the staff of the school, management in the school, are happy with the expenditure of 1.95 million. They think that the building to be built with that sum of money will satisfy their needs. And we should be listening to them. That is what they want. And interesting enough, there are parents and there are parents, because I have spoken to parents who are absolutely delighted that 1.95 million is going to be spent on Stornoway Primary School, because up until then, nothing was going to be spent in Stornoway Primary School. You really have to think through what it is you're doing here. And statements that are being made here about the school role and such like are just nonsense. The school role has never been at what it could be, which is 574. That's a maximum role for the school. It never has been anywhere near that in the years since 2010 onwards when Sandwich Hill School closed. Sandwich Hill School closed because parents were not sending their children to Sandwich Hill School. You have to remember that that's the reason behind it. And the Scottish Government said, you can't have two schools because you've got plenty of room in one school. So we have to do what we're told in these circumstances. Over the years, since 2018, the role of Stornoway Primary School has fallen year on year. It is round about 70% at the moment. What we are going to give to Stornoway Primary School will be more than adequate to cope with the role in the school. It is also the case, as somebody suggested before, that the school role was upgraded to a certain extent by people from out with the catchment area coming to the school. That was because at the time there was preschool there where there was no preschool anywhere else. But that tendency has stopped now because of all the preschools that we've built elsewhere in the islands. So the school role is gradually going to settle down to people in the Stornoway area.
Your time's nearly up, Councillor McCormack.
Thank you, Convener. I think I've made all the points I wanted to make. And the other, well, one final point I would make, and that is that the fact that you build 200 houses in the Stornoway catchment area does not mean you're going to get hundreds of children for the school. In the Mackenzie Park area, where we have, I can't remember, 180 houses or something, 22 pupils went to Stornoway Primary School out of these 180 odd houses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McCormack. Councillor Colin McLean.
I think we should actually use facts. And what we heard in the last speaker was a lot of devoid of facts. First of all, the fact was that the Sandwich Hill pupils were promised increased and better facilities in Stornoway Primary. And he was at the meetings I was at as well. And he should bear that fact out because he was one of the councillors who gave that undertaking. So that is the fact. The second thing is, did the primary school need to put in a formal application when they were promised that? They didn't, because the promise was there. So therefore, that should have carried on. And the third thing is that parents were sending their children to Stornoway Primary. They were not. The parents in Stanwick School, I was the head teacher of that school at that time, were insistent that they had such a belief in the school and they wanted the school to be retained, but they took their children out because of the promises that were being made for Stornoway Primary. Then to say that some of the pupils in the catchment area there is not going to Stornoway Primary, of course they're not. They're going to Scolaroo, which has got a far better facility down the road. And it's got a facility that every school, if we're councillors, and I agree with you, Councillor Susan, for what you've said there, this should be our aspiration for all our schools. And it certainly will be my aspiration for my schools in my ward to see that the aspirations that we have is that we aim high. So I would say to the other, I believe that the motion, the amendment put forward by my two men beside me here, is competent. It's competent in this as well. It's looking for 190,000 out of 770,000. Am I right? Underspend. Some of that the director has indicated is waiting for commitment. Fair enough. He mentioned 252. He mentioned 165. That comes to 417. Then he mentioned about play parks. He couldn't give a number on that. School offices, an itinerant member, so on and so forth. Harmonisation of timetables, still in dispute with the teachers' union. Harmonisation of timetables. So I'm saying that certainly there is commitment to be done, but this is an opportunity for us for 190,000 to get things right for the primary school, or premier primary school. The biggest primary school that we've got, and as Mr. Murray alluded to, it is the second biggest school in our authority. So I would say that this is an opportunity, and if we don't get it right, then it's an opportunity missed.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McLean. Councillor Francis Murray.
Thank you very much, Convener. I would say that having recently departed education, I'm very aware there will always be competing demands on budgets, and I certainly would not in any way want to be seen to be speaking against the interests of the young people in the school that I've only very recently departed from. And of course, funds will have to be found for the projects that the director mentioned. However, what I would say is there's nothing worse than having a new building, shiny new facility, and all the enthusiasm and you know, extra encouragement for the young people and the staff that brings, and then discovering a lack of something, where it's a lack of space, a lack of storage. And I know this from relatively recent experience, because you know you've got the new facility and you know you've moved down the queue and nothing will be looked at again for some time, and that's, you know, you accept that. So I would say it's important that we get it right with this commitment. Having said that, I would also ask that one way or the other, whether the amendment is successful or not, we move quickly on this in order to allow the head teacher and her management team to move on with the planning for the use of the new facility in her improvement planning as rapidly as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Councillor Ray McKenzie.
Thank you. Thanks, Convener. Once again, I'm shocked at Councillor Angus McCormick fighting so hard to deprive Stornoway Primary, as he has done over the years, and I just can't understand that. Particularly since he was one of the councillors that took the decision to close Sandwich School. And the reason why the pupils were bypassing or were leaving or going to Stornoway Primary was because they were not getting after school classes, whereas they were in Stornoway Primary. Anyway, to get back to the point, I suppose some people are wondering why there's a big fuss being made over storage. You know, it's not just storage. It's I would say a mere 83 square meters, which gives the building far more functionability, if that's a correct word. The fact is that if you've got a certain size of building and you're going to increase the storage within that building, what happens? The playing surface is obviously restricted or cut down by size. So this is a small addition. I don't see how it, how it can be argued that it's going to delay matters. It's a bay which is pretty small, being added onto the side of the building, but which will give far more ability for the building capability to use the thing for different purposes. The extra bay will future-proof, and again, somebody mentioned the fact that we'll have to come back to this and we'll have to stick something on. Why not do it now when the building is being built? The extra bay would future-proof this and make it genuinely fit for purpose. It would have so many additional uses. Early years would have their own storage space, the storage for benches and chairs, and it could be used for the community and the school for other particular projects. So the message is pretty clear, and I think it's been borne out by what people say. Get the storage right or it won't function. And this is particularly true in a standalone building, as you can appreciate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Finlay-Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. Going back to what the figures the director had, it's a total commitment of 717,000. He listed them all there. I would probably like to ask those who have proposed this amendment where they intend to take that money from, the 195,000. There's a list there of all the money that's been committed. And I agree with Councillor Francis Murray that whichever way this goes, we need to get this moving. We need to get this out to tender and get prices. Because at the moment, as far as I'm concerned, we're just working with a ballpark figure. And we have no idea of the real cost. And we won't have any idea of the real cost until we get figures of how many estimates we get. But we need to get this out to tender and get some figures in. I mean, it would be great if it came back in tendering at 1.8 million. But then again, it might come back in at 2.3 or 2.4 million. So then we've got to, we'll have to revisit it again. But we seem to be sitting on this. The price of materials, the price of most materials in the building and the construction industry has leveled out, apart from steel and insulation, which is a big part of this building. The longer we dither about here and not get prices in, that price is liable to keep on going up and up and up. And we might end up with what was asked for in the first place, a £300,000 to £400,000 mugger. And that's where all this began. And those of us who voted against that were called out on social media. Those of us who wanted a better thing, a better facility for Stornoway Primary, were called out on social media as those who had stopped it, when actually we have now ended up with a budget of 1.95 million. And yes, of course, we all aspire to have the best for our children and for our young folk. And we would like to be able to afford to build whatever we needed, but that's not the case. So I would just like to know where this 1.95 million is going to come from out of the 195,000, sorry, out of the 717,000 that has been already committed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Don Crichton.
Thank you, Convener. I think Mr. Stewart has made a very important point and set the context of where this all started. In terms of what was asked for at the start, was a 300k to 400k mugger. And the leader at the time said, no, let's start again and see if we can provide a better facility. And that's where we're at today. And we already agreed last week to add 150k to this project. So, Mr. Murray said, this can be better than it can be. In fact, it's better. What we have been proposed now is better than we ever proposed, that he ever proposed, or anyone proposed at the very start of this whole process. So, and my understanding is that parents and the teachers and management are happy with what has been proposed. I mean, if there are adjustments to be made, they should be made within the footprint of what is planned already. And Mr. Stewart made the point about the rising costs, and we need to get on with it. And of course, we have aspirations for our own schools, and that's why we have to be equitable and look at the very demands that have been placed across our budgets to ensure that our schools' estates are well equipped. I mean, and again, the point, where are we going to take this 190k from what's already been committed in this budget? That's what we have to decide today, because something's got to give at the end. And I think we've been very supportive of the school, and like I said, we've provided a proposal and a facility that's far greater than the aspiration that there was at the very start. And I think we need to get on with it.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Howard. I think you're right on, Councillor Stewart. In the debate, you're only allowed to speak once, so I can't allow you to come back in. Councillor Mustafa, he can't come back in either. Anyone else want to come in? If not, we'll... Councillor Kenneth McLean.
Thanks, as the newbie, I feel as though I'm jumping into a pool of sharks here, but oh, I'm going to be the bad guy. I don't like it. Oh well. So there's been lots of talks about promises and pledges made by previous councillors and groups and administration and whatnot. The fact of the matter is that's been done up and down the islands, rightly or wrongly. Promises were made. It's happened down in Bata, where I'm from. We were promised XYZ with our new school. entire sections of it are now being pulled out, or we're being asked to fund parts of it through community funding, i.e. raise the money yourself. Councillor McSween pointed out something similar last week, I think. A lot of the communities had asked, you know, the reality is we don't have the money. So if you want these extra bits, you're going to have to fund it yourself. And that's the position we find ourselves in down south. Again, it's lots of promises were made in the past when there was more money. We just don't have the money now. That's the way it is. All of us here are going to have to go around and pour freezing cold water on a whole lot of lovely ideas. That's just it. That's the political reality of where we find ourselves. The entire Barra project was scrapped at one point. They had the whole plans written up, done, all the rest of it. The entire thing had to be pulled because it went way over budget due to, you know, Brexit and all the rest of it. So now we're having to have a far scaled back project. You know, our services have been basically condemned by the Scottish government for what, 15, 20 years now? But it is what it is. I can't help but feel we're you know, what's the phrase, robbing Peter to pay Paul here. All right, yeah, sorry. It's, of course, I don't think any of us here, we all want the best for our communities. We all want to future-proof our projects. It's the same down in Barra. It's a word that I'm sure people in here are sick fed up of me seeing and writing in emails, and gentlemen like yourself and all the rest, you're doing exactly the same. We're all fighting for our corners here. You know, Barra is one of, if not one of the few bucking sort of communities in the Highlands and Islands with a growing young population. Places, lots of young families. But we can't, it's difficult to take that into consideration for our own school because there's no money to future-proof it. It's just, sorry, it's just the reality. So we have a proposal of taking money from this fund and from this overspend or not overspend or whatever you want to call it. And from what was said, it sounds as though a lot of that money is going to be spent in letting people's get to education in terms of transport and in terms of technology, and especially with e-school and things coming on, you know, the new infrastructure, the new laptops, etc., etc. So you've got the basics of education there. You've got the actual ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and people getting to it and understanding it and learning. And then you've got a sporting facility, and I'm going to be crucified for saying this, but I can see Paul laughing. When it comes to children's education, I think education is more important than sports. God, I will be crucified for that. But that's what you're talking about. You're talking about getting kids to the education and getting kids able to learn, whether it's remotely or in the school, versus recreation, which is important, but we just don't have the money for both. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McLean. Does anyone else want to come in to the debate? Okay, we'll just bring it to a close then. We'll wind it up and we'll ask the proposer and the seconder of the motion and the mover, sorry, of the motion and the amendments to sum it up. So first of all, the proposer of the motion of the amendment, sorry, to sum it up, Councillor Mark MacDonald.
I think you've all heard the pros and cons. I know there's a budget, but it's imperative that we get this development at Stornoway Primary right first time, a fit for purpose building. I mean, if we're going to have containers outside the building in due course, I really don't see why a school that is over 50 years old comes last to providing laptops for pupils. I know that's important, but you can get reconditioned ones, or you can wait a year. Why should Stornoway Primary wait and wait and wait to the detriment of the children and the wishes of the Parents' Council especially? I've heard that the school is happy with it, but I've never heard that from anybody that's complained to me about it. So all I would wish you that you vote for the amendment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Paul Finnegan as the mover of the motion.
As I said earlier on, that underspend or budget carry forward in the budget has been committed to put 190,000 into the extra bay for the Stornoway Primary will have serious impact on how we actually take forward those list of items that I'd already indicated. And where it would affect more than one item. It wouldn't just be one item that would be affected. It may well be a couple of different things because the way the money's been split and the way the costs are. In addition, the project team has certainly recognised the sports facility at 6%, the storage facility not being good enough, and they worked hard to actually bring it up to 13%. In Sports Scotland's recommendations, it states it's approximately 15% in the document that I read. And certainly it also recommends Sports Scotland's recommendation. If we're following recommendations on space, it recommends 3 badminton courts for a school the size of Stornoway Primary. Sir E. Scott, the school, I'm an Island Games athlete. I train there every day. And it has 3 badminton courts. It has 1 storage room, and it's perfectly adequate. It has assemblies. It has Stornoway Primary with the sorry, not Stornoway Primary. So Sir E. Scott with the Scolaria has well over 200 pupils, and the roll in Stornoway Primary at the moment is 366, I believe. So and that is Sir E. Scott is perfectly adequate and is used by the community, and there is everything. There's storage mats, gymnastic mats. They're stored away in the one room, and it's adequate. So I believe that if it's stored and used properly, it will be adequate. And I just believe that I think that these items are important. They're more important, and we have to look at our laptops, looking at transport. And trying to recruit and get more staff in terms of the recruitment of play park officers, in terms of itinerant school support staff that are actually creating jobs there. And I think while it's important, storage is important, I agree it's important, these are more important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Finnegan. So we now go to the vote, which will be a roll call. I'll ask Derek Mackay to call out the names.
Can I ask members, when your name is called, to speak clearly, either motion or amendment? Motion is the name of Councillor Finnegan, seconded by Councillor Hussain, and the amendment in the name of Councillor MacDonald, seconded by Councillor Murray. Convener?
Motion.
Leader?
Motion.
Deputy Leader?
Motion.
Kenneth John McLean? Ian M. MacLeod?
Motion.
Susan Thompson? Mustafa Hussain?
Motion.
Euston Robertson?
Motion.
Paul Finnegan?
Motion.
Grant Fulton?
Amendment.
Robert Mackenzie?
Motion.
Angus Morrison?
Motion.
Ranald Fraser?
Amendment.
John Norman MacLeod?
Amendment.
Donald McSween?
Motion.
Donald Crichton?
Motion.
Johnny McKeever?
Amendment.
Callum McLean?
Amendment.
Ian M. Macaulay?
Amendment.
Malcolm MacDonald?
Amendment.
Gordon Murray?
Amendment.
Ray Mackenzie?
Amendment.
Angus McCormack?
Motion.
Francis Murray?
Amendment.
George Murray?
Amendment.
Norrie MacDonald?
Motion.
And Finlay Stewart. We have 15 votes for the motion and 12 votes for the amendment.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek. So the motion is carried. We'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the committee decision report for the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee from the 21st of June. Sorry, Councillor Francis Murray.
I had a point of order on education and I was slow to get it in. The debate had started on item number 15, the update on the harmonised timetable. I had made a note that that had been withdrawn, that report, but it appears it was agreed to recommend. Successful work was done.
Sorry. My apology, I don't know if that was appeared. That is correct. That item was withdrawn. We will make that correction. My apologies to the Comhairle for that. That should have been corrected. That item was indeed withdrawn.
Okay, Councillor Murray, are you quite happy with that? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Lucian Robertson, as Chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee.
I move the decision report of Transportation and Infrastructure Committee of Tuesday, 21st June 2022 for approval.
And seconded by Councillor Susan Thompson, Vice Chair. Thank you very much. Item number C is the minutes of the Sustainable Development Committee meeting of the 22nd of June. Councillor Crichton.
Thank you, Convener. I move the committee decision report of the Sustainable Development Committee that met on the 22nd of June.
Thank you, Councillor Crichton. And seconded by Councillor Norrie MacDonald.
Seconded by me, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor MacDonald. Item number D is the minute of the Policy and Resources Committee from the 22nd of June. And Leader.
Thank you, Convener. I move the Policy and Resources Committee decision report of 22nd June 2022.
Seconded by?
I second.
Councillor Duncan McInnes, the Vice Chair. Item number E is the committee decision report of the Audit and Scrutiny Committee meeting of the 23rd of June. Councillor Angus Morrison.
Thank you, Convener. I move the committee decision report of the Audit and Scrutiny Committee that was held on the 23rd of June. And I also have sight now of an amendment, which I am happy to accept. I have a discussion with the Chief Executive about this, and he is also in agreement. And the report in question in the amendment will be brought to a subsequent meeting of the Audit and Scrutiny Committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Angus Morrison. Councillor MacDonald, are you second?
Second that.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor MacDonald. Okay, can I ask Councillor Ray Mackenzie to read the amendment that has been put forward to the minute of the Ordnance Scrutiny Committee, please, Councillor Mackenzie?
It's going to be that. I thought. Did I understand that the chairman had accepted?
He's accepted the.
Oh, well,
the amendment, aye.
Thank you to the chairman.
Just for clarity, we'd like you to, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That the chief executive be requested to submit a report detailing the circumstances associated with the withholding of files from internal audit referred to at paragraph 3.16 in the report by the chief internal auditor on the internal audit annual report and assurance statement 2021 to 22, and in particular that the report by the chief executive should set out the legal position on the withholding of files from the internal audit and the reasons why internal audit were not given access to the files referred to in the report by the chief internal auditor. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Mackenzie, and that's been accepted by the Chair and Vice Chair of Audit and Scrutiny. Okay, thank you very much. That's next item, notice of motion, and there are no notices of motion. So thank you very much for your participation in today's meeting, and I think our next scheduled meeting is on the 28th of September 2022, and I all hope you have a good summer break. You will enjoy a break after the last few months campaigning and then being elected. So hopefully it'll be a bit of a rest for most of us, but not the 3 months, but a wee bit of a rest during the time anyway. And I'd also like to draw members' attention to the Air Services Seminar tomorrow at 9:30 AM and encourage all members to attend. Jonathan Hinkles will be presenting and will be attending the seminar in person, and it will give all members an opportunity to address any questions directly to him. So that's at 9:30 tomorrow morning in the chamber. So thank you all, and next meeting, as I said, will be on the 28th of September.